Every generation has believed it was living in the darkest of times, where crisis and uncertainty seem to reign. Yet if we look deeper, the truth reveals itself in a different light. Fear merely changes its garments, while its nature remains the same. From wars and economic collapses to the rise of new technologies, humanity has always faced the same fundamental test: to choose whether to live in fear or to discover strength in spiritual awareness. This video does more than recount the stories of those who found peace amid the roar of bombs. It shows you the path to transform anxiety into creativity, to turn the present moment into a point of power, and to shape the next decade into an era of love and prosperity. Fear wears many masks. From the dawn of history until this very day, mankind has never ceased to tremble before the unknown future. At any moment we open our eyes to the world, the news, the upheavals, or even the whispers within our own minds can cause the heart to quiver. Ancient people once panicked at the sound of thunder, believing it to be the wrath of the gods. Later generations recoiled in fear at inventions such as the telephone, the railway, or electric power. Some were convinced that radio waves would destroy the human body, that trains would race faster than the heart could endure, that electric light could burn down every home. And yet, all these things, once labeled as monsters, became essential to life, so common that no one remembers the fears of yesterday. Our grandparents shuddered at the specter of war. Bombs falling, economies collapsing. Our parents worried over political turmoil, social changes, movements that seem to overturn the foundations of the past. And today, when we hear of artificial intelligence, climate change, financial crisis, or global unrest, fear appears again in a new disguise. It wears a different garment, but its face is the same. It whispers the same haunting question into the human mind: what if everything falls apart? Look closer, and we see that fear has not changed at all throughout time. It only alters its mask. It is like an actor on the stage of history, moving from one scene to the next, slipping into a new costume to play the same role again. When the spotlight shines, the audience, that is, humanity, believes this is a new character, a new unprecedented threat, and surely this time the end has come. Yet the truth is, the actor has always been one and the same, and his name is fear. Fear has a subtle genius. It borrows the language of each age to frighten the people of that age. For the ancients, it wore the robes of omens and portents. For the medieval world, it was plague and famine. For the 20th century, it was the specter of world wars, of financial collapse, of ideological divides. In the 21st century, it transforms into anxiety over technology, global injustice, the environment. It may change its laughter, alter its voice, but the eyes remain unchanged, the same eyes that cause the heart to contract and the breath to grow short. This reveals an important truth. No generation is truly unique in its fears. We often imagine we are the only ones witnessing decline, yet those before us thought the very same. The trap is that when fear comes, we mistake it for objective reality, armed with irrefutable proof, but in fact, it is nothing more than a continuation of an old script, a drama played out for thousands of years. Fear feeds upon the imagination of man. It does not exist on its own. It requires our minds to inflate its dark visions. A piece of news breaks, and fear seizes it as a new cloak, stepping into our thoughts to whisper its tragic tales. What is remarkable is that people rarely recall how many such panics they have survived, and that in the end, life carried on, and humanity not only endured but advanced. There is a strange truth here. Fear always convinces us that this time is different. Every age believes it stands at the brink of history's collapse. that its troubles are more severe than all that came before. But if we step back and look across the centuries, we see that fear merely spins like a puppet on strings. It can throw individuals into panic, but on the larger scale, humanity continues to live, to progress, and to turn what was once seen as danger into the fabric of daily life. When we grasp this, fear loses most of its power. It can only terrify us if we believe it brings a fresh revelation. But once we recognize it as the same old actor, we see it has little authority left. It is like standing backstage and watching the actor change costumes. We are no longer deceived by the illusion on stage. In the depths, fear is always trying to steal our peace by pretending to be truth. But it is never truth. It is only a prediction, a projection, a counterfeit image of a future not yet born. If we turn our eyes to the present, we realize that right now we are still breathing, still standing, and the world has not collapsed. Thus, the first lesson is to recognize the true face of fear. When we see it, let us not panic, nor imagine ourselves the first to confront it. Remember that millions before us have trembled in the same way, and yet they lived, they built, they created. Out of crises, humanity discovered new leaps forward. The railway, once feared as destruction, became the lifeblood of transport. Electricity, once dreaded, became the light of the world. Technology today, though viewed with suspicion by many, holds the promise of opening new doors for mankind. Fear wears many masks, and as long as we fail to see through its disguises, we remain vulnerable to its spell. But when the mind awakens, we recognize there is only one actor behind them all. Then, instead of being led by fear, we can smile, observe, and walk forward with steady steps. Historical testimony and Fox's lesson. In the darkest years of the World War, when the skies over London were torn apart by the thunder of bombs, and when New York sank into blackouts to guard against attack, the very air seemed thick with collective fear. People believed the city could be destroyed at any moment, that the darkness itself was a herald of the world's end. And yet, in the midst of that chaos, there were groups who refused to let fear dictate their lives. They gathered together not to weep, but to pray and to affirm a single truth. Divine love governs all. The astonishing thing was this: rather than being swept away by hysteria, they discovered a peace that nothing could shake. In the midst of the night, they found a light within that shone brighter than any lamp outside. Emmet Fox observed and recorded these experiences. He saw that while the city lay under the cloak of darkness, there were small rooms where people gathered, repeating affirmations of love, of the presence of God. The bombs still fell, the sirens still wailed, yet in those rooms the air was filled with tranquility. Instead of fearing what had not yet come, they chose to trust in a sacred order greater than all events. Darkness was no longer a symbol of peril, but became a hidden chapel where men and women tasted a different kind of freedom, the freedom from the slavery of fear. The remarkable thing was that they did not deny reality. They knew full well that danger stalked nearby, but they learned how to separate what was truly happening outside from what was only a projection of the fearful mind. That distinction gave them power. They no longer saw darkness as an enemy, but as an opportunity to return to the inexhaustible source within. This raises a profound question for you, listening now. When darkness seems to cover your life, what do you choose? Surrender to panic, or a firm refuge in the soul? This is not a question to answer hastily, but one to weigh in your heart. For your true answer will determine whether you live as a victim of circumstance or as one who finds peace in the midst of chaos. reflecting on this story, we see that human beings can master their response to any event. Some, in the time of war, proved that peace does not depend on outward conditions, but on an inner choice. Instead of letting the news and the sound of bombs drown them in fear, they chose to affirm that divine love was present and that this truth was mightier than any force outside. You see, this is not some distant tale of history. It is a mirror held up to your own life. Even though, in the face of unsettling news, economic crises, or vague fears of the future, you can walk the same path. You can do what those people in the dark did, affirm with certainty that a higher order is at work, that divine love and wisdom still hold the reins. Perhaps you wonder whether this can truly work in the ordinary days of your life. The answer is found only in your own experience. Try it once when anxiety rises. Instead of letting the mind chase fearful visions, remind yourself of a simple truth, that you are not alone, that life is upholding you, that the order of the universe is greater than all outward turmoil. In that moment, you will notice a change, small, yet real, in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the light of your eyes, and from that subtle change, strength begins to grow. Those people of wartime were not distant saints. They were ordinary men and women, but they chose a different way of living. That choice made them living witnesses of an eternal truth, that peace does not come from waiting until the world outside is quiet, but from restoring the link with the source within. Take a moment to ponder this. If they could hold peace in the roar of bombs and in the blackness of night, then you can also find peace amid negative headlines, daily worries, and the pressure of modern life. The truth has never changed. The only question is whether you recognize it and practice it. And now I ask you, where are you listening from? In this world today, tell me, for your presence in this story is itself a miracle. In listening, in reflecting, you are joining the very current of consciousness into which those who prayed in the dark once poured their faith. Thank you for being here, for allowing these words to reach your heart. Crisis is a spiritual test. Each time the world trembles with upheaval, the first thought the human mind clings to is that we are facing a crisis unlike any before. Headlines, conversations, statistics all seem to confirm that the present moment is uniquely severe, that never has uncertainty spread so widely. Yet if we look beyond the fog of current events, another truth appears. Crisis is not a new enemy. It is an ancient test dressed in new disguise. Throughout history, crisis has always been present. It has come in the form of war, plague, natural disaster, or economic collapse, but its true essence is not in the outward events. Its essence is the probing of man's inner strength. Crisis is like a mirror held before us, revealing our degree of spiritual maturity, showing whether we stand firm on the foundation of faith or whether we are still swept into panic. It is not destruction, but an opportunity to measure the depth of conviction and steadfastness. Emmet Fox once pointed out that every crisis, whatever its form, presents the same question. Do you believe in a divine order greater than the circumstances before your eyes? In those days of security blackouts, when all of New York lay in darkness, the fear of attack drove many into terror. But for those who affirmed the truth that divine love governs all, the darkness became a hidden sanctuary. What appeared to be danger outside was in fact only a shell. Within it was a test, giving mankind the chance to choose whether to ground life upon fear or upon love. Crisis is never meant to destroy. It is like fire testing gold. When metal is thrust into the furnace, the flame does not exist to consume, but to bring forth the pure essence within, so it is with man. When pressed into circumstances that seem unbearable, that is the very moment the truest part of him can rise. The issue is never what happens, but how we respond. He who trembles before the dark will see crisis as an abyss. He who affirms the presence of divine love will see it as a veil of testing behind which shines an unshaken light. Crisis plays a familiar game. It dresses itself in novelty to make us believe we are meeting something unprecedented. Yet its essence is always one to stir in man the fear that the world has lost order, that the future is threatened. Once we perceive this, we step out of the illusion, for it is not the outward event that determines the outcome, but the inward stance. When we stand steadfast in the truth, that divine love still rules, all crisis loses the power to bind. In the darkness of war, as sirens wailed, some trembled and imagined ruin, while others knelt, folded their hands, and affirmed, God is here. His love surrounds all. The first were led by fear, and thus their lives were filled with chaos. The second stood on truth, and thus found peace even amid falling bombs. This is the clearest evidence that crisis is not the end, but the test by which we choose our spiritual foundation. When we see crisis as a spiritual test, we no longer treat it as enemy. It becomes an opportunity to grow, just as no athlete grows strong without demanding training. No soul grows steadfast without passing through trials that seem beyond endurance. Every crisis is a classroom where the curriculum is written in the anxieties of the times. But the lesson is the maturing of faith. Out there, the press may continue to fan flames of unrest. The news may keep many awake at night. But once we grasp the essence, we are no longer enchanted. We realize that instead of yielding, we can use the very crisis as a bridge into a new level of awareness. Then we can say to ourselves, I am not defeated by what is happening, for divine love still holds command. This does not mean we deny or escape reality. Living by faith is not pretending. Crisis does not exist, but looking it in the eye and seeing through its disguise. In the midst of turmoil, we affirm with certainty that the source of all order is present. That affirmation allows us to walk through crisis not as victims, but as souls being trained to grow stronger, clearer, freer. When we understand crisis in this way, we stop asking, why me? And begin asking, what can I learn from this test? And that question opens a new path where strength is found, not in circumstances, but in union with eternal truth. In every upheaval, the test remains the same. Do we choose love or do we choose fear? And that answer alone will decide whether the crisis becomes a pit of despair or a stepping stone to a higher plane of life. The future is malleable substance. There is a deep misconception carried in the minds of most of humanity that the future is a fixed river flowing toward us with unavoidable events. We are taught to believe that tomorrow arrives like a cold block of stone, immutable and beyond anyone's power to change. Yet spiritual truth declares something very different. The future is not a signed decree, but a soft mass of clay, a pure substance awaiting the touch of our conscious hand to shape it. Our thoughts, our beliefs, the mental patterns we maintain today are the fingers molding and determining what form tomorrow shall take. Picture a sculptor's workshop. In the corner rests a raw block of stone, seemingly lifeless. The untrained eye sees only useless material, but the sculptor perceives within it a form waiting to be released. With each strike of the chisel, each careful motion, he is not merely removing fragments, he is revealing the image that has always been there. So it is with your future. It is not a rigid weight pressing upon you. It lies in your hands like clay in the potter's grasp. The only question is, what form are you shaping? Are you pressing it with fear or with faith? With hope or with doubt? Emmet Fox often emphasized that consciousness is the only true sculptor. What you think, what you believe, what you affirm in the present are the commands sent forth to the raw material of the universe. If you continuously imagine failure, you are carving a mold for failure. If you plant in mind the image of abundance, you are shaping prosperity. The future does not arrive along a straight and unyielding line. It bends and flows with the movements of your thought today. The danger lies in the fact that most of us are unaware. We are constantly sculpting the future. We suppose we are only worrying, daydreaming, drifting into gloomy imaginings, yet every such moment is a strike of the chisel, a mark pressed into the clay, a line etched into the form of tomorrow. The question is not whether you are creating the future, but whether you are creating it unconsciously or with intention. Those who live in fear carve patterns of anxiety. Those who live in faith create forms of stability and sufficiency. Look back at your own life, and the evidence is plain. Your current experiences, your work, your health, your relationships bear the imprint of thoughts you once sustained. Life today is not an accident. It is a sculpture you have already fashioned, perhaps without realizing it. This may weigh upon you, but it is also the key to freedom. For if you once unconsciously shaped what you did not desire, then you can just as surely, with awareness, shape what is good. Nothing can stop you except the very mental pattern you continue to uphold. Pause and ask yourself, what form do you wish tomorrow to take? A day filled with pressure and worry, or a day marked by peace and good results? The answer is not in the hands of circumstance, but in your hands, here and now, in the thoughts you nurture at this very moment. Each image you hold, each belief you affirm, is being pressed into the material of the future. You need not wait until tomorrow to create, for you are creating this instant. This means that worry is no harmless reflex. It is negative creation. Each time you allow your mind to paint a picture of collapse, you are commanding tomorrow's substance to take that form. Conversely, each time you affirm the truth that divine love governs all, you are setting a new mold, clearing a path for peace and order to appear. This is no fantasy. It is the law of consciousness. The future is born out of the present, and the present is shaped by the quality of thought you maintain. Do you realize this power lies in your hands? For too long you may have allowed fear to play the sculptor, carving weary tomorrows. But you can reclaim that power and become the artist of your destiny. The question is, are you ready to change? If you truly wish to step into a new life, declare it now. Write the words, I am ready to change, or even type the number 1. I want to know that you are here not only listening to this message, but choosing to act, choosing to acknowledge the power in your hands. Thank you for being present in this journey, for it is your presence that makes these truths come alive. The future is clay, and you are the potter. That clay may become a vessel of beauty or an empty fragment. It all depends on the skill and intention you bring. You may continue letting fear shape it for you, or you may place your own hand upon it and begin carving a different design. The design of a life radiant with light, peace, and abundance. That power has never been anywhere else but within you. In this very moment, the loop of anxiety and unconscious creation, there is one truth few ever recognize. Fear is never a passive state. It is a form of creation, but a negative one. Each time we allow imagination to paint a picture of disaster, we hand fear a hammer and a mold, permitting it to strike the substance of the future and carve a shape of insecurity. We often believe that worry is confined to the mind, harmless to the outer world. Yet in reality, anxiety is a current of energy, a hidden command sent into the subconscious and into the universal field of consciousness. And the universe, impartial and faithful, responds precisely to what is sent. When we fear poverty, losing our work, illness, or broken relationships, we are not merely enduring an emotional state, we are planting seeds. These seeds lie buried in the soil of the subconscious, and in time they sprout into concrete experiences. This is why so many people feel their lives replay the same script again and again. The very things they feared most seem to appear not because of cruel fate, but because they themselves continually engraved those images into the mind until the subconscious accepted them as blueprints to be carried out. Picture a projector. The outer screen can only display what is on the reel inside. If that reel is filled with collapse, failure, and loss, then the picture life presents cannot be otherwise. The trouble is that most of us do not realize we are the ones holding the camera, shooting the same scenes over and over. Thus the cycle turns. Fear arises, fear creates images, the images sink into the subconscious projects them outward, the reality strengthens the fear, and a closed loop is formed. This mechanism explains why obsessive anxieties carry such power. The one who constantly fears sickness finds health repeatedly challenged. The one haunted by lack experiences scarcity over and over. The one afraid of betrayal encounters endless tests of trust. There is no mystery here, only the law of spiritual causation. What consciousness plants, the subconscious nurtures, and the outer world reflects with exactness. What makes this loop most dangerous is its unconsciousness. If we know we are creating, we can choose to plant good seed, but when we do not, worry becomes a hidden sculptor, carving grotesque forms for tomorrow, day and night, like a farmer scattering seeds without realizing they are weeds, and then wondering why his field is choked with thorns. So do we plant anxiety in the subconscious and then lament when life is filled with the very things we dreaded? This does not mean we must deny or suppress the feeling of worry. Rather, we must understand its function. Anxiety is a signal that we are channeling creative energy in the wrong direction. It is like a warning light on the dashboard, alerting us that the mind is being driven by negative images. If we pause a look directly at the fear and change the picture in our minds, we can break the loop, but if we let it run unchecked, the cycle will continue, carrying us from worry to worry until faith is utterly eroded. Emmet Fox declared that man is never a helpless victim, not even when outwardly cornered. For even when everything outside is in disarray, we still hold the power to choose the image we keep within. This is the point of absolute freedom and of absolute responsibility. We cannot blame the world if our own minds are continually sending out images of fear to change the outcome. We must change the real inside. If we observe closely, we find the structure of the worry loop is always the same. First comes a small thought. What if? That thought stirs a tension. The tension projects into the imagination, spinning out worst-case scenarios. These images intensify emotions until they swirl into a storm. The body reacts, heart racing, sweat breaking, restless sleep. All this becomes evidence convincing the mind the fear is real, though in truth it is only a self-reinforcing chain. That is how worry becomes a false prophet. It foretells misfortune, then through our own energy brings that misfortune to pass. Yet at the moment we recognize this, the key is in our hands. If fear can form a negative loop, then faith and affirmation of truth can form a positive one. If fear plants seeds of unrest, faith plants seeds of peace. If fear invites scarcity, faith opens the way to abundance. If fear writes the script of the worst, faith sketches the script of the best. The law itself does not change. The only difference lies in the seeds we choose. Thus, the loop of worry is not only a threat, but an opportunity for awakening. Each time we notice ourselves being pulled into fear's cycle, we may pause and ask, what image am I allowing my mind to carve for tomorrow? That question is like light shining into a dark room. It reminds us that the hammer of creation is still in our hands, that we can stop chiseling deformed shapes and begin shaping a new design. The power never lies with fear. It always lies with the one who chooses faith. Once we understand this, the loop is no longer a prison but a teacher. It reminds us of the creative power of consciousness, that every thought, however small, is a seed carrying the power to shape the future. From there, we step into a new path, not into unconscious worry, but into intentional creation. This is the turning point where man ceases to be the victim of fear's cycle and becomes instead the artisan of peace and prosperity. Scientific faith and the law of spiritual causation. There is a fine yet decisive line between projecting fear into tomorrow and sowing consciously into the spiritual soil of today. The unawakened mind will allow itself to sketch scenes of unease and call it foresight or preparation, but the awakened one knows that every thought is a seed, and the law of spiritual causation will bring forth precisely what is planted. Here is where scientific faith emerges, not blind belief, but an understanding of the immutable principle governing the relationship between consciousness and reality. Emmet Fox once said that worry does not make us safer. It only increases the chance of turning the negative into reality. For the mind is a creative field that does not distinguish between desire and fear. It simply accepts the image most often nourished and sets to work to manifest it. That is why scientific faith is not a matter of closing the eyes and praying, but of daily vigilance, directing the power of consciousness toward images of harmony, order, peace, and abundance. Picture a farmer. If he plants rice, he does not worry whether the seed will grow into a rose by morning. The law of causation itself will see to the result. In the same way, when you plant in your subconscious the image of love and order, you need not know exactly how events will arrange themselves. The law of spiritual causation will do that work. Your task is steadfastness to guard against the weeds of worry and doubt from choking the good seed. In this sense, scientific faith means cooperation with the natural law of spirit. It does not require you to deny crisis or close your eyes to disorder. It simply requires you to remember that divine order is always greater than temporary chaos. When you hold to this faith, your mind is like a farmer tilling, sowing, tending. You understand the process, and you trust the harvest will come because the law has already decreed it. So this is entirely different from the naive optimism so often heard, where people say things will work out while inwardly saturated with doubt. Scientific faith does not rest on vague hope. It rests on the truth that every mental image brings forth a corresponding result. It is trust in law, as sure as an engineer trusts that a bridge will stand when the calculations are correct. When the mind aligns with eternal principle, you will begin to see tangible results in your life. Order replacing chaos, peace replacing anxiety, abundance replacing lack. Some may ask, how can one maintain this faith in a world so unstable? The answer lies in returning often to the inner sanctuary where there is a voice that no outer noise can drown. This is times the power of the voice within, times not merely a sound you hear, but a space to which you return. It is not just an echo in the head, but a dwelling place where turmoil subsides and spiritual law reveals itself plainly. When you live from that place, you discover a different kind of security, not safety, because circumstances have changed instantly, but because inwardly you are anchored, and that inner anchoring through the law of spiritual causation gradually shapes outer conditions to reflect safety. What once was a loop of worry becomes a loop of faith. You sow the thought of peace, you reap the experience of peace, and with each harvest comes further evidence to strengthen faith. This law is as exact and impartial as gravity. Whether you believe it or not, it still operates. But those who understand and cooperate with it receive a different result from those who blindly oppose it. The one who sows fear reaps insecurity. The one who sows trust in divine order sees life gradually brighten. This is no mere theory. It has been proven by countless men and women across history who stood firm in times of war, poverty, or plague, not because they were extraordinary, but because they knew where to place their faith. Therefore, the key is to shift from passive submission to fear into active cultivation of the spirit. Each morning you may allow newspapers, social media, and the news to plant seeds of panic in your mind. But you may also choose to pause, listen to the inner voice, and affirm the truth that divine love governs all. That choice alone decides what seed you are planting for tomorrow. And because the law of spiritual causation never fails, tomorrow will bear the shape of the seed you sow today. Thus, scientific faith is not merely a noble phrase. It is the practical application of spiritual law in each moment of life. It turns every thought into a deliberate seed, every affirmation into a decree, every belief into a bridge leading to order, peace, and abundance. And when you live in this understanding, you cease to be a victim of circumstance and become a co-worker with the creative power of the universe. The power of the present. All anxiety about tomorrow springs from a fundamental misunderstanding that the future is a fixed land approaching, and that the images we imagine must inevitably step into our lives. Yet spiritual truth points to something altogether different. The future does not exist as a solid entity. It is only possibility. The real power lies in the present. It is this very moment that forms the bridge between human consciousness and the eternal creative source. If we miss it, we lose the only place where action can occur, the only place where transformation is possible. When people speak of eternity, they often picture an endless line of time stretching infinitely in both directions. But eternity is not the extension of time. It is a quality of consciousness, a state we may enter in this very instant. The past is gone. The future not yet arrived. Only the present is the doorway to the eternal. Only here in this breath, in this moment, do we touch the inexhaustible power. What exhausts humanity is not the work of today, but the leakage of consciousness into the assumptions of tomorrow. We sit in the present while the mind drifts ahead, conjuring scenarios that have never happened. We imagine failure, loss, scarcity. Each image strains spiritual energy, leaving us weary before anything has even occurred, like a leaking vessel that cannot hold what is poured into it. Our energy spills into lands of illusion. Emmet Fox once said that every time the mind wanders into imagined tomorrows, we abandon the one moment that contains our strength. That is the betrayal of the present. A man may sit in a quiet room, no danger near, yet tremble lose sleep, even fall ill, because his mind has lived in an illusory future. Meanwhile, the one who abides in the present finds that everything needed to face life is here. Now, the power of the present is not vague philosophy. It is the most solid ground in spiritual life when we gather the whole of our attention into this moment. Something subtle shifts, the breath deepens, the heart steadies, the eyes grow clear. And in that state, inner wisdom speaks, no longer enslaved by endless assumptions. We begin to see the step that is ours to take right now. The imagined futures not only fill us with fear, they drown out the wisdom of the present like trying to listen to a friend. While the ears are filled with noise, so does consciousness fail to hear the inner voice when it is consumed by scenes that do not exist. Only in silence, in stillness, in return to this moment, do we hear the deeper truth. There we find real safety for the present, can always be met, can always be faced, can always be received. One of the greatest illusions is the belief that by thinking enough about the future, we will become safer. The truth is the reverse. The more we drown in prediction, the further we drift from the true power of response. Safety does not lie in knowing what will come, but in knowing that when it comes, we will meet it from the clarity of the present, and that clarity can only be trained by daily practice, refusing to let awareness bleed away into hollow tomorrows. The power of the present is also the reminder that life never demands. We solve 100 years at once. It gives us a day, an hour, a minute, and in each minute there is always enough strength, enough wisdom, enough provision. What overwhelms us is never the moment itself, but the imagined weight of 10 or 20 to come. When we pause and work only with a single moment at hand, we feel lightened, and we discover that no burden is beyond endurance. Understanding this truth reshapes our way of living. Instead of letting consciousness slip away like wasted water, we learn to hold it in the present. Instead of being bound by imagined futures, we choose to act from the clarity of now, and from those small actions, tomorrow is formed not out of worry, but out of peace and vision. Thus, real power is not in what we think will happen, but in how we live this moment. Eternity is not an endless future, but a quality of awareness when it stops, awakens, and becomes fully present. There, we touch the source of power that has been with us since the beginning, a power that knows neither fear nor limit. Living from that place, we not only overcome anxiety, we begin to create a new life where each day stands as a testimony that the present is the soul's true point of power. The universe responds to the frequency you broadcast. There is an immutable law governing all of life that few truly grasp. The universe does not care what you wish for or what you resist. It simply responds to the frequency you broadcast. That frequency is woven from your dominant thoughts, the images you hold steadily in your mind, and the emotions you cultivate each day. Whatever signal consciousness sends forth, the universe faithfully amplifies into lived experience. This means that if you continually dwell on fear, you are transmitting the frequency of insecurity. The universe does not analyze whether you want insecurity or not. It simply answers by sending more experiences in harmony with that vibration. Like a radio receiver, it does not concern itself with whether you enjoy the program or despise it. It simply plays the channel you have tuned, and the moment you change the channel, the broadcast changes with it. The tragedy is that most people have never realized they are holding the dial. They live as though unwelcome experiences have fallen upon them from nowhere. when in truth they have been broadcasting that frequency all along. Worry, resentment, belief in scarcity, all are vibrational waves. When repeated and sustained, they become the background music of life. And the universe can only harmonize by sending more of the same tune. Emmet Fox once declared that spiritual law never distinguishes between what you desire and what you dread. It only knows to create more of what you continually keep in consciousness. When you despise poverty and constantly think of it, you are still holding poverty at the center. When you fear illness and daily imagine yourself broken, you are planting the image of disease into the subconscious. The field of consciousness recognizes only one fact. This is the picture most often repeated, and it proceeds to manifest it. The only way to change the universe's response is to change the frequency you are broadcasting. This does not mean straining to suppress negative thoughts for repression, only strengthens them. The key is substitution. When the mind is haunted by a negative image, you must introduce a new image, a new affirmation, a new frequency. Just as in a darkened room, you do not fight the darkness. You light a lamp, and the moment the light appears, the darkness vanishes without leaving a trace. Look closely at your life today. The relationships you hold, the financial conditions you face, the health you experience, all are reflections of the frequencies you have been transmitting. You may believe yourself a victim, but if you look deeper, you will see that each thought has helped shape the present. At first, this may shock you, for it places immense responsibility upon your shoulders, but it is also good news, for if you created this circumstance through the old frequency, then you can create a new one through a higher frequency. The power lies in choosing the music you will broadcast. If you wish to reap peace, sow thoughts of peace. If you desire prosperity, sow images of abundance. If you long for love, affirm that divine love surrounds you. Do not imagine that the universe distinguishes between sincere desire and hidden worry. It simply responds to the most consistent and dominant vibration. That is why you must be vigilant about what you allow to dwell long in your mind. This law is as exact as sowing seed. You cannot sow thorns and expect roses. You cannot plant bitterness and hope for sweetness. The soil does not discriminate. It is faithful to the seed sown. So it is with the universe. It does not judge. It does not bargain. It does not play favorites. It simply multiplies the exact seed of thought you give it. Once you understand, there is no longer anything to blame. Every experience is the result of a frequency once broadcast, but there is also nothing to fear, for the power to change has always been in your hands. Change the channel, and the world reflected to you will change. No need to wait for a miracle from outside. Simply adjust persistently from within. Human power does not lie in controlling every event, but in governing the frequency of thought. Once you master that, you discover that the universe is always fair, always responsive, always precise. It is like a vast mirror reflecting faithfully the face you present. If you want to see a smile, smile first. If you want to see light ignited within, living in this awareness, you cease to fear the events to come. For, each event is only the echo of the frequency you are already sending. And from that awareness, you begin planting new seeds of faith, of love, of abundance. Slowly, the picture of life changes. Where once there was barrenness, garden blossoms. Where once anxiety echoed, peace abounds. And none of it comes from magic outside, but from an eternal law that has operated from the beginning. Whatever is sown in consciousness will yield its exact harvest in experience, the golden key and the practice of reorientation. The golden key is a mental act at once simple and powerful. When the mind plunges into disaster, you do not argue, you do not analyze, you do not try to outreason fear. You replace it instantly with a single point of focus. God, 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 asterisk. That is the command to switch channels from fear to divine presence, from chaos to order, from negative imagination to the source of peace. The mechanism is straightforward. The mind can truly hold only one object in the present moment. If you keep giving fear a screen on which to project, it will play its film endlessly. Remove the screen, replace it with the sacred image, and fear's reel has nowhere to run. The golden key does not deny the problem. It prioritizes connect first, then act. Once the line of connection is clear, perception sharpens, decisions become concise, steps grow steady. Watch what happens in the body when you apply it. The breath deepens, the heart slows, the nervous system shifts from tension to restoration. The catastrophic image fades like a weak signal, and a sense of rock-like stability spreads through body and mind. There is no hidden magic here, only a redirection of attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, emotion and action follow. When the golden key fixes attention upon the divine, the entire psychological and physiological system aligns with peace. The rule of practice is replacement, immediacy, repetition, and no negotiation. When the mind paints the loss of your job, times God, 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 asterisk. When the body stirs with fear of illness, times God, 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 asterisk. When the email arrives that jolts your heart, times God, 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 asterisk, offer. No further argument with fear, no explanations, no counterpoints. Every debate with darkness grants it more time. Turn on the light that is enough. To make the golden key reflexive, you need structure. Set hourly reminders. When the alarm sounds, pause a moment, silently repeat times God, God, God times 3 times with a deep breath. Link it to a gesture such as placing a hand over your heart or touching your wrist lightly. So the nervous system bonds action with state. Each repetition is an anchor dropped. With 12 or 15 anchors in a day, the vessel of awareness is not easily swept away by storm winds. Integrate the golden key into the transitions of your day. Upon waking, before opening your phone, before entering a meeting, before a meal, before answering an important message, before leaving your desk, before lying down to sleep. These gateways are where old habits creep in. Stand guard with 3 simple words. God, 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 asterisk. Gradually you will notice decisions becoming brighter and cleaner. No longer made in the fog of worry, but in the clear air of presence. When panic surges, the brain often needs rhythmic activity to cool down. Combine the golden key with breath. Inhale slowly. Silently say times God, asterisk. Hold gently, God. Asterisk, exhale fully, God. Asterisk, repeat for 5 cycles. You need not chase away dark thoughts. Hold to rhythm and word. And after a few cycles, the torrent of thought slows as the surface water settles. The well of wisdom appears. What to do and what to leave undone becomes self-evident. Sometimes the mind will protest, insisting this is avoidance of reality. No, the golden key never replaces action. It replaces the state of mind before action. You are not dismantling smoke, you are finding the valve. Once the inner state is calm, actions become more effective, words less misguided, choix less regrettable. This is spiritual discipline, like the surgeon who scrubs before an operation. Scrubbing is not the surgery, but without it, no surgery is safe. You may strengthen the reflex with a journal. Record each moment you switch channels successfully, even the small ones, before replying to a difficult message. Times God, 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 asterisk, before entering a tense conversation. Times God, 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 asterisk, receiving test results. Times God, 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 asterisk. Each entry is a testimony. The mind believes what it sees repeated. You are building evidence for your own faith. At times you will swept into disaster for hours or even a day. Do not blame yourself. Self-reproach is just another disguise of the ego pulling you back into the old channel. Return gently. God, 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 asterisk. Each return deepens the groove of a new neural pathway. Reorientation is not a single act, but many, until the new way becomes the familiar road. In prolonged trials, increase the structure, set alarms every 30 minutes for a few days. Place a small card in sight bearing the words, times God, 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 asterisk. Mark a subtle reminder on your phone or computer, prompting you to switch channels before responding. Create a short evening ritual. Hand over heart. Repeat times God, 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 asterisk. Then recall 3 moments of successful reorientation from the day. You are training spiritual muscle. Whatever muscle is exercised becomes strong. The golden key harmonizes with other practices described before. When writing fears on paper, to transform them into affirmations of truth. Begin and end with times God, God, God. Asterisk. When walking through a projection of tomorrow, open the imagined path with times God, God, God times, so it shines with clarity. When practicing financial gratitude at day's end, interlace each note with times God, asterisk, so the heart beats in rhythm with wisdom. In the end, the golden key is a simple discipline to guard the most precious treasure, your attention. Attention is the lifeblood of all mental images. When it leaks, the soul is depleted. When it is gathered into divine presence, peace is recharged. 3 short words become a pocket key, unlocking the door back home at any time. In any place, when the inner house is lit, the outer shadows lose their terror, and from that illumined center, you step into tomorrow's tasks, not with the trembling hands of fear, but with the steady rhythm of one who knows he stands upon solid rock. Scientific prayer and its proofs. There have been moments in history when fear so saturated the atmosphere that men could scarcely breathe. On the eve of D-Day, thousands of soldiers faced the reality that dawn might be their last. They trembled, vomited with tension, their eyes vacant as though already staring into death. In that hour, an army chaplain did not comfort them with vague promises. He gave them what Emmet Fox called time scientific prayer. He gathered them and led them to repeat together, God is here. God is my strength. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Asterisk. For 10 minutes they affirmed, and then a new atmosphere descended upon that unit. Fear did not vanish entirely, yet it was clothed with a peace beyond description. This was not false optimism, but a shift of consciousness from trembling flesh to the awareness of an indestructible presence upholding them. Likewise, during the Blitz in London, when sirens wailed and bombs fell ceaselessly, there were families who chose to shelter not only in concrete bunkers, but in the 91st Psalm. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Asterisk. They read it aloud, repeated it, until each word became like a dome of light arching over their home. While neighbors sat awake in terror, they slept peacefully beneath the bombs. No wall is thicker than faith. No steel plate stronger than consciousness united with divine truth. These testimonies are not told to embellish, but to remind us that scientific prayer can tangibly alter the very climate of mind, even when the outer world remains unchanged. The great difference between scientific prayer and ordinary prayer lies in the approach. Ordinary prayer is the plea to a distant power, begging him to change events. Scientific prayer does not seek to persuade God, but to reorient man's mind. It affirms a reality that has always existed, that divine love governs all. It transforms petition into identification, turning the cry for help into harmony with eternal law. One of the simplest yet most powerful methods Emmet Fox taught was to write fears upon paper. While fears remain vague in the mind, they swell like phantoms. On paper, they lose their power, reduced to finite words. Then you reverse them into affirmations of truth. If the fear is of unemployment, write, divine intelligence guides me to perfect employment, asterisk. If the fear is of illness, write, asterisk, God's life flows through me as perfect vitality, asterisk. Finally, burn the paper. This is not superstition, but a message to the subconscious. The old program is ended, the new has begun. The flame does more than consume paper. It severs the mental cord binding you to the false image. This is times the power of the voice. Within times, not merely a sound you hear, but a space you return to. Each affirmation of truth is that voice opening a sanctuary where fear has no doorway to enter. This practice carries subtle physiological effects. Writing draws the fear out of the shadowy subconscious. Reversing it rewires the neural pattern. Burning it imprints the body with closure, signaling the brain that transformation has taken place. The body experiences a ritual of ending. The mind embraces the affirmation as a new beginning. Thus you are freed to move forward. Consistency is essential. One affirmation does not instantly alter life, but repeated, it works like water seeping into stone. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity. Fox called it the law of spiritual causation. As you sow, so shall you reap. Sow fear. Reap unrest. Sow affirmation. Reap peace. And when peace spreads within, the outer world slowly begins to mirror harmony back. In today's world, each of us has our battles. They may not be Normandy or the Blitz, but unpaid bills, sudden illness, broken relationships. Instead of letting the mind project disaster, you may stop, write it, reverse it, affirm it, release it. You can build your own modern Psalm 91, not as words, merely to recite, but as a dome of peace raised within your soul. Scientific prayer does not demand blind faith, but the spiritual discipline to keep yourself from spirals of destructive imagination. Discipline to repeat truth, even when the senses see no change. Discipline to act not from fear, but from awareness. And the result of this discipline is not only inner peace, but gradual transformation of outward conditions as well. The proofs are written in history and in countless lives. Soldiers at the threshold of battle found strength in affirmation. Families under bombardment found peace in the psalm. And today, you too may discover change in your own struggles. For spiritual law makes no distinction of era or circumstance or person. It responds faithfully to the dominant frequency of thought. Therefore, when fear rises, do not bargain with it. Do not let it seize the screen of mind. Remember the golden key. Remember the process. Write, reverse, release. Remember the living testimonies of those who came before. And above all, remember that the inner voice is not just an echo. It is a dwelling place, always waiting, always ready, always offering you the unshakable strength to which you may return and by which you may live. Imagination as spiritual technology. Imagination is not a pastime of the mind, nor a privilege reserved for artists and scientists. It is spiritual technology, the workshop where reality is shaped from unseen substance. Every invention, every structure, every shift in society or in personal life must first pass through this doorway before it can step into the outer world. No building rises without first appearing in the mental picture of an architect. No music resounds without first trembling in the inner ear of a composer. And no new life is ever built until its owner has first seen it with the inward eye. Thomas Edison proved this truth with his entire life. Before a bulb ever shone in the laboratory, it had already burned brightly in his imagination. He held the image of a perfect lamp so clearly that it became the blueprint guiding every experiment, every adjustment, every failure. Edison was not groping in blindness. He was following a light that already existed in the spiritual world, waiting only for the material world to catch up. Over 1,000 failed attempts could not shatter that map. For to Edison, the bulb already was, he was simply drawing it from the invisible into the visible. This same law operates in ordinary life. When you worry, you are using imagination as a tool of destruction. You picture losing your job, losing health, losing loved ones, and your feelings and actions begin to revolve around those images. Conversely, when you choose to imagine a life of harmony, prosperity, and peace, you are giving imagination a creative task. It becomes the design, and your subconscious begins to organize behavior, emotion, and decision to match that design. What makes imagination spiritual technology is precision and persistence. You cannot sustain a vague blur of an image and expect it to harden into reality, just as an engineer cannot draft faulty blueprints and expect a building to stand. Imagination requires you to nurture a clear, vivid pixel, repeated until it becomes a stable pattern in consciousness. Once that pattern is fixed, the universe simply does its part, shaping it into outer form. Edison was no exception. He merely applied a principle available to all. You can test it in the smallest ways. Imagine your day flowing with clarity, ease, and effectiveness. See yourself entering a meeting with confidence, handling tasks smoothly, returning home with joy and gratitude. If you hold that image in the morning, you will find yourself inclined to act in alignment with it throughout the day. Your feelings shift, your energy alters, and the circumstances around you begin to arrange themselves to fit the picture you planted. The problem is that most people let imagination run wild in the negative. They dream of failure more than success, sketch anxious scenarios more than peaceful ones, replay painful memories more often than they seed new visions. Thus, their lives drift along unconscious designs. They build houses of confusion and call it fate, when in truth they simply handed the subconscious the wrong blueprint. Emmet Fox often stressed, imagination is the bridge between the conscious mind and the subconscious. The conscious mind draws the image, the subconscious receives it and manifests it. This law never errs. Once you understand, you see, there's nothing random and nothing a matter of luck. Some houses collapse. Some lives collapse simply because the design was faulty from the beginning, and other lives stand strong and prosperous because their owners learned to draw rightly. Therefore, the discipline of imagination is not child's play, but the maturity of the soul. It requires that you sit still, close your eyes, and focus wholly on creating a new image. It demands repetition until the picture feels more familiar than the old memory. When that point is reached, reality has no choice but to mirror the new vision. Imagination is the workshop of reality. You may use it to forge chains of bondage or to open doors of freedom. You may employ it to replay old defeats or to call forth a life of abundance. This spiritual technology has been yours since birth. The only question is whether you wield it consciously or leave it running in unconscious drift. And that answer will decide whether you live imprisoned by anxiety or in the flowering garden of creation. Genius and the divine plan. Michael Faraday did not step into the laboratory with the ambition of conquering nature. He entered with the spirit of one who serves natural law, with the unshakable conviction that the universe already rests upon a perfect order, and his task was only to humbly perceive it. Through this attitude, Faraday touched the fundamental principles of electricity and magnetism, opening a new age for mankind. He did not create out of nothing. He revealed a truth that already existed. This is how genius truly works, not through pride, but through resonance with divine intelligence. True progress in history has never been random. From Faraday's electricity to Edison's light bulb to modern medical and technological discoveries, each has been a revelation, a disclosure from the eternal source of wisdom flowing through a consciousness prepared to receive. The discoverer is but a channel, an empty vessel through which the light may pour. If the vessel is clouded by ambition, selfishness, or fear, the light cannot penetrate. But if the vessel is cleared by service, by the aspiration toward higher things, then the first rays of revelation appear. Emmet Fox often reminded us that genuine progress is more than material achievement. It is proof that divine intelligence is guiding humanity upward. Every new discovery is not the lucky strike of an individual, but a link in a greater plan where mankind is gradually entrusted with greater power to approach harmony. Thus, what we call genius is simply the temporary alignment of individual consciousness with the infinite stream of intelligence. When we grasp this, we cease to idolize genius and instead learn to open ourselves to receive. For the capacity to connect with that stream is not reserved for a chosen few. It resides in everyone. The only question is whether we prepare ourselves to be a clear vessel. Humility, stillness, and the will to serve are the preparation. A man may have no degree, nor laboratory, but if he learns to dwell in quietness and to listen, he too can receive the ray of revelation that transforms his life. Ask yourself, do you believe that in a silent moment, an idea could come that changes the course of your life? Do you believe that in your darkest trial, a flash from divine wisdom could show you the way out? If your answer is yes, you are already opening the channel. And if your answer is no, it matters little. For the very moment you begin to believe, the door begins to open. Thank you for being here. Present in this reflection, your presence itself is testimony that you hunger for a deeper connection with the wisdom that lies beyond the noise of daily life. And that very hunger is the signal by which divine intelligence recognizes you and begins to flow into you. Looking back, we see clearly that human history is not driven by chaos, but by a divine plan. Every invention, every step forward is like a piece of the great mosaic, little by little completing the larger picture. And in that picture, each of us is also a stroke of the brush, The question is, will we allow ourselves to be guided by divine intelligence, or will we scribble in fear and ambition? If Faraday could see in electricity an eternal law, then you too can discern in your own life an eternal principle. Your task is not to create from nothing, but to remove the veils so that the truth already within can shine forth. And when you do, you too become a channel of divine intelligence, not only to transform your own life, but to add your part to the onward progress of humanity, the atom and the spirit. An energy metaphor. In the last century, humanity stood stunned at the power hidden within the atom. A particle so small, seemingly harmless, contained within it an energy vast enough to change the world. When split, it unleashed a current of force that could light cities or destroy them. This is more than a scientific fact. It is a spiritual metaphor. Within every human being lies a sacred nucleus, a spark of infinite intelligence, and like the atom, that potential is often concealed beneath layers of habit, fear, and limiting belief. Emmet Fox looked at the atomic age and saw a spiritual lesson. He saw that man, too, carries limitless power. The question is never whether that power exists, but how we approach it. Aligned with principle, it does not destroy, it creates. It does not scorch, it unfolds. It does not spread terror, it brings order and light. In daily life, this spiritual energy reveals itself when we adjust consciousness. A single thought, a single belief can ripple through the whole of our reality. Recall the moment you shifted from fear to faith, how suddenly your feelings, your actions, even the outcomes seem to change like a chain reaction. One right belief can release a force of creativity powerful enough to lift you out of deadlock and open doors long shut. This is why imagination, affirmation, and focused thought carry extraordinary power. They are the switches that activate the inner nucleus. When you center upon a truth, such as time's divine love governs all times, you touch the core of consciousness. And creative energy radiates outward. This energy does not explode like a bomb. It breaks the invisible chains of fear, limitation, and doubt. If the atom teaches us that matter conceals vast power, spiritual energy teaches us that within every ordinary life lies immeasurable potential. The difference is in the method of release. Misused, it brings disorder. Applied rightly, it opens sustainable creation. The principle is clear. With spiritual energy, the key is love, faith, and alignment with divine order. Imagine your life as a spiritual reactor. Each thought, each image is a particle. Feed the reactor with images of worry and failure, and you set off a chain reaction of anxiety and collapse. Feed it with images of harmony, peace, and prosperity, and the chain reaction yields strength, clarity, and transformation. The point is control. Just as nuclear energy demands precise stewardship, spiritual energy requires conscious discipline. It cannot be tapped through impulse, but through steady practice. When you engage scientific prayer, when you repeat the golden key, when you hold a clear vision, you build the safeguards that channel this force in its true direction. And once it is guided, it ceases to be a danger and becomes a resource of creation. The atomic metaphor reminds us of the might in the seemingly small. A fleeting thought may pass, but a repeated thought becomes a nucleus of power. It draws to itself more energy of the same frequency until a chain reaction forms. This is why chronic worry leads to real crisis, and why steadfast faith can lead to real miracles. The outer world does not shift by mystery. It shifts because spiritual energy has been activated. molding reality to a new pattern. Every person stands at a choice. One can unconsciously trigger inner energy in destructive ways, letting it erupt into chaos, or one can consciously direct it by principle, turning it into light and creation. This choice is not dictated by fate, but by each decision, moment by moment, and at every moment you hold the switch. The marvel of spiritual energy is that, unlike physical fuel, it does not diminish. The more you use it rightly, the more abundant it becomes. Each affirmation of truth deepens the well. Each vision of good expands the storehouse. Each moment of peace in chaos multiplies your capacity to receive. The metaphor of the atom is not for effect, but for remembrance. Within each person, within each instant, lies a sacred nucleus waiting to be awakened. And when it is awakened by love and faith, it does not destroy, it creates. It does not cast shadows, it lights the path. And this is no distant promise, but a spiritual law that has always been present, awaiting your recognition. And use daily visualization practice. Each morning is a doorway. The moment you awaken, the mind is still soft like clay, easily shaped by new images. That is the hour of creative authority. The practice of times, daily vision setting times, is not some elaborate ritual, but a short appointment with yourself. Before opening the phone, before letting the world intrude, you sit quietly and write down the picture of your day. Not a dull checklist, but a vivid, living image. Write as though it were already true. I enter my work with clarity. I meet people with confidence and peace. I return home in joy and gratitude. Asterisk. When you write, you are not casting wishes, you are drawing blueprints for the subconscious. And when you read them again with certainty, not as hopes, but as decisions, you send the command for the subconscious to begin arranging events in harmony. This is the difference between one who drifts and one who creates consciously. The drifting man opens his eyes and leaves the day to chance. The creative man opens his eyes and sketches the map. The subconscious does not argue. It simply builds the design handed to it. Daily vision setting is the first act of the day to ensure the right blueprint is delivered. At night, another doorway opens. As you prepare for sleep, awareness recedes and the subconscious becomes receptive. This is the time for the time's anticipatory walk. With eyes closed, picture a golden road stretching ahead the path of tomorrow. Walk it with your mind, passing through scenes already envisioned. See yourself handling challenges with calm. Hear good news arriving unexpectedly. Watch yourself acting with clarity. No hesitation. These images are not meant to control details, but to establish the spiritual atmosphere that will govern the day to come. And the subconscious, like an unseen conductor, begins arranging the notes of circumstance to harmonize with the score. This practice is not idle fantasy. It is spiritual technology. Just as Edison held the image of the light bulb until matter was forced to comply, you hold the image of yourself, a day of order and clarity, until circumstances have no choice but to reflect it. The law does not play favorites. It simply works with the design consistently repeated. By combining daily vision setting in the morning and anticipatory walk at night, you create two powerful broadcast stations. In the morning you sow, in the evening you water. The seed sinks into the soil of the subconscious, and in time, life no longer drifts by accident. It begins to carry the imprint of the picture you planted. This is spiritual power, not spell or superstition, but disciplined cooperation with the law of mental causation to deepen the experience. Add one more step. When you write your morning vision, read it once with conviction. Then place your hand over your heart and whisper, This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to, asterisk. Each reading is more than words. It is a door opening into the inner sanctuary where you may dwell at will. Each repetition carves a clearer path, and in time the path becomes a highway into the subconscious. Some days you will forget, or scribble hastily, or imagine weakly. Do not be discouraged. Remember, this is not a one-time test for proof, but a discipline like building muscle. Creating, each vision trains imagination into a precise instrument. At first, you may notice only a lighter mood. Then you find your decisions sharper, opportunities appearing at the right time. And one day, looking back, you see the entire current of life has shifted. The strength of this practice lies in persistence. A picture held long enough becomes an underground stream, and that stream silently guides actions, feelings, even unexpected events. This is the art of sowing into the subconscious, and with consistency, you will learn that the subconscious is not passive soil, but a builder, quiet yet relentless, turning mental design into the architecture of reality. Each morning you write, each night you envision. You are digging deeper the channel between conscious and subconscious. When that channel is open, creative energy flows without strain, without struggle. And from that flow, a new life is raised, solid, steady, mirroring exactly what you once drew with imagination and affirmed with faith, personal consciousness, silent blessings, and the law of prosperity. In the ordinary moments of life, the human mind slips almost unconsciously into the habit of judgment. Walking down the street, we glance at a face and draw a conclusion. Sitting in the office, we compare colleagues and attach labels. These streams of judgment, seemingly harmless, actually weave a heavy atmosphere, an energy of division that feeds fear and suspicion. Emmet Fox pointed to another way, simple yet powerful. The shift from judgment to silent blessing. When you see a stranger, instead of judging, silently affirm, peace be upon you. May you be illumined, asterisk. When you meet a loved one, instead of searching for flaws, inwardly acknowledge, the divine spirit lives within you, asterisk. Each time you do this, you not only change how you see another, but you release a drop of light into the collective sea, and one drop of light can dissolve more darkness than you imagine. Silent blessing is the practice of softening the heart, of reminding consciousness that all life springs from one source. When we see others, not as objects to criticize, but as reflections of the divine, we begin to liberate ourselves. The mind grows lighter, free from spirals of anger and comparison, leaving room for peace. And as peace is maintained, we become broadcasting stations, radiating healing energy into the collective. The law of prosperity operates on a similar principle. Most people live in a consciousness of lack, forever focusing on what is missing, what is lost, what has not arrived. That focus becomes a signal, and the universe faithfully responds with corresponding experiences. Fox suggested a practice both simple and profound. Each evening, before sleep, review the day and note the signs of supply. A meal offered, a coin found in your pocket, a bill paid on time, or a conversation that enriched your heart. Record 5 such tokens and repeat, thank you, God, you are my source. This affirmation is not mere words. It is the re-establishment of a fundamental truth. Supply does not come from jobs, markets, or individuals. The only source is God, the infinite intelligence, the living stream that sustains the entire universe, when we anchor our lives in that source, the fear of loss dissolves, for that source never runs dry. Jobs may change, markets may shift, but the divine source is unchanging. The nightly habit of recording economic blessings is like opening a channel for water to flow. At first, only drops appear, but as consciousness grows accustomed to perceiving supply, the channel widens and the flow strengthens. For spiritual law always responds truthfully to the focus of consciousness. Look at lack and you draw more lack. Look at supply and you receive more supply. This is not wishful thinking, but the way the law of correspondence operates when we combine the two practices, silent blessing and economic recognition. We touch a deep principle. Both are shifts from outer to inner, from fear to faith, from scarcity to sufficiency. Both train personal consciousness to become a channel for the divine. And when enough individuals practice, the collective atmosphere is lifted. Division is replaced by connection, anxiety by gratitude, scarcity by supply. The truth is that the law of prosperity does not concern itself with whether you are rich or poor, educated or unlearned. It responds only to the consciousness you hold. If you carry a consciousness of gratitude and affirm with conviction, God is my source, asterisk, you step into the current of supply. If you carry a consciousness of fear and lack, you cut yourself off from that current. The choice rests in each thought, each affirmation, each silent act of the day. Silent blessing may not change the world overnight, but it changes the atmosphere within you immediately. Evening recognition may not pour gold into your pocket at once, but it alters your relationship with supply at the root. And when that relationship changes, life begins to move accordingly. The process is quiet, but steadfast. It requires no display, no dramatic proclamation, only faithful repetition. When the day ends and you sit to record 5 signs of supply, whispering, God is my source, asterisk, you close the day, not in worry, but in gratitude, and the next morning you rise carrying the vibration of thanksgiving, ready to meet fresh tokens of supply. This is how the law of prosperity works, simple yet certain, silent yet powerful, and in that silence you discover the truth that prosperity has never been about the outer world, but has always begun with a decision in personal consciousness, inner guidance and the decade covenant. There are moments at life's crossroads when we long for a voice from outside, a clear instruction, a sign in the sky. Yet the truth is that the wisest voice never sounds from without. It rises within, in the stillness of the soul. Emmet Fox called this the Time's silent notebook method. The practice is simple, yet profoundly deep. When a decision presses upon you, instead of rushing into analysis or canvassing opinions, write the question in a notebook set aside for this purpose. Write it plainly, precisely, without rambling. Then close the book. Leave it for a day, no brooding, not forcing. The next day, open the notebook and write whatever arises in the mind, provided it comes clothed in peace. If what you write brings a sense of lightness, that is guidance. If it brings tension or doubt, it is not yet the true voice. The key is peace, for peace is the language of divine wisdom. As you become acquainted with this practice, you discover something remarkable. You are never abandoned. Guidance is always present, though daily noise drowns it out. The silent notebook simply clears a path for that guidance to emerge, not with spectacle, not with mysticism, but with the steady discipline of returning inward, where the higher wisdom has always been waiting, and in time, as you learn to seek direction for each step, you will feel summoned to a greater surrender, not merely asking for tomorrow, but offering an entire decade. This is the sacred covenant where you declare that the next 10 years will no longer be ruled by selfish calculation or fear, but consecrated to a higher purpose. You may whisper, "This life belongs to love, and the coming decade shall be its testimony, asterisk, in making this vow." You do not dictate the details, nor map every turn, but affirm the qualities, that the decade will be filled with peace, radiant with love, reflecting divine abundance. Once consciousness is thus established, the details arrange themselves. The act of dedicating a decade carries strange power. It severs petty worries, dissolves trivial schemes, and lifts the horizon. Man is often trapped in short-term fears, but when he affirms that his life belongs to a divine plan, his mind shifts at once. Fear ceases to be the motive, love becomes the root, and when love is the root, every action, every decision, every opportunity shines in a new light. This covenant is not merely personal, it is collective. When one soul chooses to live from love instead of fear, they alter more than themselves. They contribute to the healing of the world. Each loving thought sown becomes a seed in humanity's shared consciousness. Each decision rooted in divine trust becomes a bridge linking the present world to a brighter future. And as more souls consecrate their decade to the sacred, the whole current of mankind begins to change. The wonder is, you need not wait for a grand event to begin. Today, you may open a small notebook, write down a troubling question, and listen for the answer, wrapped in peace. Then, quietly affirm, the next 10 years, I belong to love, asterisk. This is not an empty phrase, but a declaration that shakes the foundation of your consciousness. Once such an affirmation is held, the right doors will surely open. Inner guidance and the decade covenant are not separate practices, but twin rhythms of one flow. Inner guidance is the lamp for each step. The decade covenant is the flame for the whole journey. One illumines the path of today, the other lights the horizon of years. Together, they invite you to step out of the spiral of fear and to live from love. Life is not a string of accidents. It is a tapestry woven from choices of consciousness. And when consciousness chooses love, when it dedicates itself to the sacred purpose, the tapestry cannot remain what it was. It grows brighter, more harmonious, a living proof that within every soul there is always guidance, always a call, and always a mission to be fulfilled. After the journey of 16 parts, it is now clear that crisis is never the end. It is an invitation to return to the power within. You need not wait for the outer world to settle, for peace, prosperity, and divine wisdom are already present within you. Each thought, each affirmation, each action is a seed planted in the eternal field, and that field will blossom according to the choice you make today. Step forward as a conscious creator. Consecrate your life to love instead of fear, and let the coming decade stand as proof that even in darkness, light always rises from the very heart of the human soul.